Society never simply told you that you were behind. It installed a clock inside your nervous system, a countdown that grows louder every year you remain unfinished. Every wedding invitation, every promotion announcement, every younger person succeeding at something you still haven't touched. And the terrifying part is this: you did not choose this clock. It was installed before you were old enough to question it. The modern world worships speed so aggressively that slowness now feels immoral. If you haven't figured yourself out by 25, built wealth by 30, mastered life by 35, the culture quietly labels you defective. But Carl Jung spent decades studying people whose lives completely shattered after achieving success early. And he discovered something disturbing. Many people who bloom early never become themselves at all. They become efficient performers, perfectly adapted to society, completely disconnected from their soul. And the people who bloom late, they are often undergoing a psychological transformation so deep that the conscious mind cannot even understand it while it is happening. This video is about that transformation, and by the end, you may stop apologizing for your timeline forever. Section 1. The Invisible Clock. There is a reason you feel behind even when nobody says it directly anymore. Because modern society operates on invisible timelines. Graduate early, succeed early, marry early, build fast, scale fast, heal fast. Everything is acceleration. And if your life unfolds differently, you begin experiencing shame without knowing why. Jung believed this shame is not natural. It is psychological conditioning, a conflict between the authentic self and the social self. He called the social self the persona, the mask you build to survive the expectations of the world. And the dangerous thing about the persona is that if it becomes successful enough, you forget it is a mask. The student praised for grades becomes addicted to achievement. The employee praised for productivity becomes incapable of rest. The child rewarded for obedience becomes terrified of authenticity. And eventually, the person disappears beneath the performance. This is why some people achieve everything they wanted and still feel empty inside. Because the soul cannot survive forever inside a costume. The world assumes early achievement means superiority. But Jung saw something else entirely. He noticed that many early achievers were not discovering themselves. They were discovering what generated approval. And once approval becomes your identity, you lose the ability to hear your own instincts. The terrifying truth is this: some people peak early because they stop evolving early. They become trapped inside the identity that once rewarded them. The high achiever becomes terrified of failure. The admired person becomes addicted to admiration. The successful person becomes imprisoned by success itself. Jung saw this repeatedly in patients entering midlife collapse. People arriving not broken by failure, but broken by success. They had everything society promised would fulfill them: money, status, recognition, and internally, they felt nothing, because achievement without authenticity eventually poisons the psyche. The soul would rather suffer honestly than succeed falsely. Section 3. The late bloomer advantage. The late bloomer is not using a weaker version of the same mind. They are developing a completely different instrument. Modern neuroscience now confirms something Jung sensed intuitively. The brain continues restructuring itself deep into adulthood, and the type of intelligence that grows later in life is different from youthful speed. It becomes deeper, more integrative, more intuitive. Young intelligence often gathers information. Mature intelligence assigns meaning, and meaning is infinitely more powerful. The late bloomer becomes skilled at pattern recognition, at tolerating ambiguity, at holding contradiction without collapsing, at seeing beneath surfaces. This is why some people become wiser after suffering, not because pain is magical, but because pain destroys illusions, and illusions are the biggest obstacle to self-knowledge. Section 4. The Night Sea Journey. Jung described transformation using an ancient myth. The Night Sea Journey. The sun disappears into darkness each evening, traveling through the belly of a great sea creature, and when it returns at dawn, it is no longer the same sun. This is what happens during periods of confusion. The years you thought were wasted may have been transformation happening underground. The loneliness, the failed relationships, the uncertainty, the silence. The world interpreted those seasons as stagnation, but psychologically, you were dissolving. And dissolution is terrifying because the ego experiences it as death. The old identity begins collapsing before the new one exists. This creates the unbearable feeling of becoming nobody. But Jung believed this stage is necessary, because authentic identity cannot emerge until false identity dies first. Section 5. The Fermentation Principle. Think about wine. Wine is not created through speed. It is created through transformation over time. The structure changes slowly in darkness. And that is exactly what happens to many late bloomers. They are fermenting psychologically. The world sees delay, but internally, depth is forming. This is why highly authentic people often struggle with conventional paths. Something inside them refuses to cooperate with a life that feels false. And society mistakes this resistance for laziness. But often, it is integrity. The late bloomer refuses to build a permanent identity on temporary approval. That refusal costs them years, but it may save their soul. Section 6. Why depth takes time. Galileo was dismissed before changing science. Van Gogh sold almost nothing while alive. Toni Morrison published late. Carl Jung's deepest work emerged in the second half of life. This pattern repeats constantly throughout history, because certain forms of wisdom require density. You cannot rush psychological integration. You cannot shortcut suffering into wisdom. You cannot manufacture depth through productivity hacks. The deepest people are often shaped slowly, layer by layer, failure by failure, loss by loss, until eventually, their presence itself carries weight. Not performance, presence. And that kind of presence cannot be faked. Final section. The real gift. So what is the true gift of blooming late? It is not eventual success. It is coherence. The ending of the civil war inside yourself. The moment your outer life finally aligns with your inner truth. Most people never experience this. They spend their entire lives performing identities they never questioned. But the late bloomer eventually becomes impossible to manipulate. because they have already survived losing everything false. And once someone survives that, they stop fearing the opinions of the crowd. This is why late bloomers often become powerful later in life. Not louder, not faster, powerful, because they are finally operating from something real. So maybe your strange timeline was never punishment. Maybe your psyche refused to let you build your life on the wrong foundation. Maybe the delay protected you. Maybe the confusion was construction happening underground. And maybe the person you are becoming required every single year you spent feeling lost. The ocean never apologizes for its depth. And neither should you. If this video spoke to something you could never explain before, subscribe, because this channel is for people who were never meant to live on autopilot. And if you've spent years feeling behind,